I see everybody in the chat talking. They're like, "Who is this person? Who's this superstar?" I'm just kidding. There's no chat again.
I was about to say,
This is
live? What the fuck? I don't.
this is not a chat. I swear. I swear. Um, Thank you everybody for joining us today. I am here with a very talented writer and actor, Maddie Nguyen, and I'm just gonna let her talk because she is very smart and she's gonna carry this whole thing. She's also gonna ask herself the questions, so
I'm doing it all internally in my head, and you can just like watch me process it in real time, like in my head. I'm
that's
asking the
good.
question and answering
That's
in my head. So that's called thinking.
hmm That's what we call it. Other people call it performative art. So, Maddie, thanks for giving us the time. Yeah, I mean, I just want to dive into it. Like, how did you get into this? Like, how did you get into writing?
I mean, it's just like something I always did. Like I wrote a short story in the third grade, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this is really cool!" And I was like, "Yeah, I was doing my best Lemony Snicket impression." Fooled you. Um, so everyone was like, "Oh my God, you're such." It's one of those things I think where you tell a child that they're good at something, and they're like, "Oh, maybe I can be good at something." Then they put effort into it, you know. Um, so chicken egg kind of thing. But like yeah, since like third grade, I've been told that like I'm good at writing probably because I just read all the time. And so I've never really had a reason to stop.
And when did you like? What was the first thing you've ever written that you also had a chance to perform?
Like, probably like some short skits in like elementary school. Probably some class projects in high school or elementary school. Like yeah, probably like short skits, like acting out scenes from books or something, or something about like geology, like the bacteria and the mitochondria of the cell, that kind of thing. Probably someone had to write that and act it out. So
Well, would you say there was a specific genre that like you were attracted to when you started, or was it more like you were figuring it out and just experimenting?
I think I always liked comedy, but like kind of like the like again going back to I was doing my best like Lemony Snicket impressions, so like kind of like comedy with like a darker twist, or like comedy that would kind of bite. I mean, I could do like something really heavy and dramatic, I think, but I think there's always a part of me that's like, wow, that's a bit much. Um, the voice where it's like what's funniest for the bit, but also helps drive the story along. I think it's always been kind of what I've been drawn to. Like it doesn't take itself too seriously, but also like has something to say, um, which I think is an interesting balance.
So you're a big fan of satire.
Yes, I think satire I think satire is a difficult thing because I think so many people use satire as like an umbrella term to say some really heinous things.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, it's just satire. It's like, no, you just really wanted to say some shitty things and pretended like it was funny. I think that I'm trying to think. Like I don't know why it keeps popping in my head, but again, Lemony Snicket, which is children's books, obviously, but it's some really dark shit. Um, but it also has some really funny and interesting things to say, and I think that's a harder line to walk than most people think.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, I think Russian, like Russian Doll, like again, is like one of my favorite things of all time. And some really dark shit happens, some really absurd shit happens, but it also has something to say. I wouldn't know if I would label that as satire, but it is like a dark kind of comedic tone. I'm trying to think of something that is also just like really absurd, but absurd with or Good Omens kind of has the same tone where it's just like, what's the weirdest, most absurd thing that can happen that still works logically and still has something to say,
hmm
If that makes any sense.
No, that
Like,
makes a lot of sense. I was gonna also throw in Man Seeking Woman, but I don't know if you've ever seen that show. If you haven't, I do recommend you see it. It's really, really good. It's basically a satire on like dating life, but
hmm,
like they like take every dating scenario imaginable and they like amp it up like fantasy level 1,000. So like for example, first episode, his sister sets him up with a blind date and she happens to be a troll. And she's like an actual troll who doesn't
like a
speak his
like a
language, like an actual like yeah, like a mythical troll who doesn't speak his language or anything. And you get the message that they're saying with like little things like that. But moving on from the writing, because I mean, we're gonna jump back into that at some point, but also as you were developing your writing skill, you were also acting, right? So like, what got you into that? And would you say acting helped your writing or vice versa? Like, did those two contribute to each other in any way?
Um, Maybe I knew that I really liked like in school when we would like read books aloud. I was always waiting for my part. When you would go around the room and it's like, okay, you read this passage, and I would read my little passage ahead of time, and it was so exciting to like say it out loud, and especially like when the passage that you were reading was really beautiful. It's really wonderful to have words that are so beautiful in your head, to have the experience of having them in your mouth. And so um with like when I'm writing, sometimes like some stuff can be so personal, and it's incredible to hear like the Moon play. It's really incredible to hear like it out of another actor's mouth, but sometimes I'm like, no, some things I write, and which is also like why slam poetry is also something I really like to do, because to be able to write something and have the experience of saying stuff out loud, like writing is one way of getting it into the world, but to say it is like a different experience that I really enjoyed. And I do think that like marrying the two helps. I think that having an ear for dialogue really helps. I think sometimes I read plays and then I try to like speak them out loud, and I'm like, this sounds like no one's ever said this out loud before. I think it helps to have an idea of what humans sound like when they're talking, to have like a sense of, when you're writing, to have a sense of like rhythm and pacing and understanding how actual human beings talk. I mean, it can be elevated because like it's a script, and there was always, but I don't know. I like to think that I'm okay at, or I'm working towards being better at making humans sound like human beings. I've read a couple scripts where it's like, this is gorgeous on the page, but when you try to read it out loud, where the fuck do you breathe? There's been a couple scripts where I'm like, this is just it's this gorgeous monologue, but I'm like, you can't physically speak this out loud because there's no place to breathe in the punctuation or the phrasing or anything like that. So I think having an ear for that is helpful when writing.
So basically, what you're saying, those pages you're referencing right now are as if like Aaron Sorkin wrote them on crack. I don't know if you're familiar with his writing.
Aaron Sorkin knows how human beings.
No, he does, but sometimes I don't know if like I guess the reason why I bring him up is because when you mention like not having space to breathe, it immediately brings me back to stuff like The Newsroom, and how all the characters are just like full on just talking really fast, and they always have these like long wind sentences that just like, everybody I feel like in that show has a monologue in every episode.
Yeah.
But they're like just talking really fast.
I guess one of the most heinous examples, and I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep bringing up like children's media. Me and my friends bring this up as like the funniest example of a bad exposition dump we've ever seen or heard. We were watching in college. We were watching Big Hero 6. The
marshmallow
movie.
guy.
The marshmallow guy movie. So like in the first like 10 minutes, the main kid is like picked up by his older brother, the one who dies in the fire, and he's on his motorbike, and he's like berating him for like betting on robo fights or whatever. And the older brother goes, you graduated high school when you were 13 years old, and this is what you do with your time. And we just busted out laughing because it was the funniest example of like a bad exposition dump we've ever heard. If I was to pick up my sister from, I don't know, an illegal gambling joint, I wouldn't go, you graduated high school when you were 13, and this is like it's clearly like we need to get this information to the audience, but a human being doesn't talk like that. And so anytime like we're watching something and like there's just like a really bad exposition dump, we're like, you graduated high school when you were 13 years old, and this is what you do with your time.
How do you navigate that when you're writing a play, for example, right? Because like for example, the Moon play, since it is a show and there's only so much you or the actor has access to on stage, you have to get information across, and a lot of that comes through the exposition. How do you find yourself like masking that or hiding those things?
That's actually something I'm really struggling with right now in the play that I'm trying to write right now, because it is more of like a conventional like characters on stage interacting with each other instead of the audience. There's not as much breaking of the fourth wall. It's not really as in your face as the moon play. The moon play was easier because the purpose of the character being on the moon was to exposit. She's telling her life. She's trying to leave a record of what's happened. And parts of that were kind of drawn from Samuel Beckett's Crap Glass Tape, which is you're familiar with.
I'm not. I was waiting for you to give me the whole. I want to hear this. Let's go.
I was like, so it's a play. I don't know if it was written near the end of Samuel Beckett's life. Basically, it's one man on stage, and he's talking into a tape recorder, and he's got like stacks and stacks of cassette tapes that he's made throughout his life, and so he's playing them and listening back to recordings he's made previously, and he's talking into the recording about the recordings he's made. And it basically is like the story of his life. And so it's kind of like a conversation with his younger selves too. And so I kind of drew on that for the moon play, with June talking into this tape recorder, leaving a record of why she's there on the moon, what she's doing. So because her purpose was to give information, that was a little easier to be like, hey, I'm on the moon because of this and this and this. This is why. It was easier to present that information to the audience because that was her purpose. Whereas in like a regular conventional play, we don't, we don't wake up in the morning, walk out of our apartments and go, today I'm going to work because I need to make money because I have these goals. Like, we don't say that.
I say that every morning. You're talking about, I'm in the mirror. I'm just like,
someone should write a play about you.
Well, you basically broke down the aesthetic and what inspired the moon play, like at least the aesthetic wise, but like what inspired that play in general? Like what was the thing you were going through that was like, I want to write a story about a girl who just says fuck planet Earth, I want to go to the moon.
I was I think college was wrapping up, and I was watching a lot of like personal relationships like disappear, but it's a transitory time, and so it was difficult seeing like relationships that I had cultivated, especially going into college. I was very alone, and then over the course of 4 years I developed these really intense friendships, and then at the end of 4 years it's like, oops, poof, they're gone again. So I was dealing with grieving something I had never intended to grieve in the first place. There was a breakup involved, there was a lot of things, and then on top of all that, after a while COVID happened, and then suddenly everyone was experiencing this like so I mean the idea for the moon play was there. I think originally it was more of like a conventional play. I have no idea how that would have worked, but then COVID happened, and social distancing necessitated different changes in structure and form. So, and then I was like, okay, what if I developed this as a one-woman play, which would have made sense in terms of I wouldn't need to rehearse with other actors and mask up and do all the in terms of COVID made all that go away. So then it started developing as like a one-woman show, and then that was the first few developments, while the other characters were just voices on stage, kind of like in the vein of Fleabag, honestly. And then as I was developing it further for Shiele, we brought in other characters and staged it a little more, so there would be opportunities for other actors.
And you had a chance to see this play acted by someone else, and you also had a chance to act in it. So what was that like?
It was really cool to like, well, one, when I played June, it was just me and the director and a camera, because it was still like in the middle of COVID, and it was this warehouse. It was Shaking the Tree in Portland, who was lovely enough to let us generously use their space. But it was also, there was no audience. It was, I think if you look back at the recording, it's very echoey too, which is interesting. But and then when it was done in LA with like an actual like full cast and an audience, it was very different because I know people did watch the original. Like I had people texting me about it, but I didn't really I didn't know how it resonated with people. Really. Yeah. So I got mixed feedback on the original one, and then to go see it and kind of be a little more hands off with it and hear like, what is the audience responding to? Are the jokes actually funny? I had one person come up after the show was over and they told me there's this one bit where June is like, I just went back to my dorm room and watched Grey's Anatomy alone again. And they're like, they came up to me and go, that hit. And I was like, yeah, I'm so glad that was relatable. So it was really nice to see that, like, because it's interesting how relatable isolation can be, I
Hmm.
guess. So, how feeling alone can resonate with so many people, even in the specificity of being alone, the specificity of I'm just gonna go home and watch Grey's Anatomy because I can't do anything. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Also,
that's
Grey's
a
Anatomy has been on for fucking ever, so it's an intergenerational thing by now.
no, that's one of your that's one of my favorite pieces of yours that you've written. And I'm excited to see if you're gonna like hopefully adapt it to the big screen. I think that is one of those that are. I mean, I know we've discussed in the past, horror stories about how that maybe would have worked out if you went a certain route with, another director or whatever. But I really think that that is screen worthy. I don't know. I'm gonna try to keep pushing that. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but I hope that you get it on screen at some point. Also, speaking of screen, because we had a chance to work on a film that you wrote. Um, what was your inspiration for like this? I posted it up, and again, my channel's small right now, but again, every time I post videos up, I'm very surprised that people like watch them because there is I don't know what the hell the algorithm's doing. I guess it's still figuring out who my home is or like but yeah, apparently I think the video has like now 800 views, and one person commented on it. Which is I'm starting to get comments like I'm at that stage. I feel like YouTube has stages like, oh,
Yeah.
you post now, people are watching shit,
Also,
oh, somebody's commenting.
if you're consistent about it, like that, yeah, it
Oh no,
rewards.
I'm very yeah, I'm serious about it. I mean, there's a lot of things that I want to work up to, but it's always fun knowing that these things that we've done, they have like a shelf life. Like, I mean, well, they have a life. They're not just like no, not a shelf life. They have a life. They're not on the shelf. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting because somebody in the comment wrote, I'm curious, does she even have a daughter? And they were basically asking, I think they were asking about your character.
Does my character have a daughter?
Hmm.
Oh, um,
And I mean, I wrote this very long-winded comment, which was basically me saying I don't fucking know.
it's fun to check the YouTube page now. I want to see because I saw it on um. ah, I mean, I guess the appeal of it is that it is so. I mean, we were just talking about like things that dump exposition on you, and I feel like there's also an appeal to works that have no exposition at all, and it's just like it's left up to interpretation. It's just these characters existing in a moment. I know that's why I like hesitate to be like, no, she doesn't have a daughter, because I mean, like, there's nothing that says that she doesn't. I know I have my opinions, like, as the person who wrote it, but I don't think that there's anything in the actual text that says that she wouldn't. The con Sorry, my dog just snored. The context in which it was written is, I think, again, during the pandemic, a friend and I were doing like an Exquisite Corpse thing where we just wrote short plays and sent them back and forth to each other. So I was working on a lot of two-handers at the time. And so this is another one that was originally imagined as just like a short 10-minute play with one scene. And it would have been so easy to stage it because it's just literally in a bathroom. And I remember it was basically just a conversation that I wanted to have with my mother at the time. So like pink sweater is me and nice earrings is my mother. And that's like, I couldn't really talk to the people around me or the people I actually wanted to talk to. So I just wrote it out instead. A lot of bits of the Moon Player like that too. They were just conversations that Jesus Christ.
Corday.
They were just conversations that I wanted to have but couldn't have. So in a way, it was just like having those conversations without the other person. Um, which I guess really doesn't answer the question. I mean, I didn't have a daughter. I don't have a daughter. So like, I mean,
What are
if
you
we're
talking
going,
about? She's like right there. She's like snoring right there. She's just like hidden under. Look at that.
oh
You got.
my gosh, look at
Look at that little kid. Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah.
Adorable. What's up?
Uh,
Living the best life.
but yeah, I like yeah. So if we're going with the interpretation, like the literal, straightforward interpretation of this is me having a conversation with my mother. I don't have a daughter. Um, I think you could. I mean, if someone wanted to do it as like if someone wanted to reinterpret it and play Pink Sweater as though she does have a daughter, and I think that could be an interesting interpretation. I wouldn't object to that. I'd be curious how they would support that. But if they can support it, I'm not opposed to it.
Well, I think the fact that it's not definitive is what makes it work because, it's such a slice of life moment, random conversation encounter in the bathroom, that the open-endedness, like it's all apparent in the writing. Like the fact that you wrote it the way you did, like I think that was intentional. I don't think you were intentionally like outside of the fact that you had intentions for writing it. I think in the dialogue you were purposely leaving some things open-ended. Maybe not, but just for me, like how I interpreted it, I was like, this is one of those conversations where you can't really be too sure, and you just take what you can from it. And I think that's what makes it to me interesting. I liked it. I thought it was fun. It was definitely very challenging to do. So thank you for being patient through the whole process.
Thank you for grabbing a hold of it and being like, "Hey, let's make this happen." And I was like,
Well,
"Really?
it was easy,
What
like it
about me?"
was. Listen. I always look for stuff like that. Any reason to like do an exercise because this stuff you never know what's gonna stick. And believe it or not, like I learned from every shoot. I learned a lot from that shoot alone. Like even just with the camera, like I feel like I've gotten better with that camera. And like I there was a lot to it, and the fact that we all got together and we were just at least I hope you were having fun. We were having fun with it. That to me is the most important thing. Like I feel like we have something cool. Like I'm not saying we made The Godfather, but it definitely was fun. It was I dug the style. I show people and they're like, "Is this a horror movie?" I'm like, "No, but you feel uncomfortable, right? Do you have that feeling?" It's a little.
I mean, being a woman in your 20s can be a horror movie. So, I mean,
Some people have a problem with slice of life pieces, and I realize how niche of a genre that is. But I like it. I think stuff like that, little moments, conversations, those things matter. I don't see too many films that like focus on dialogue like that. I feel like everything is retention editing really fast, and I like that. There's a time and place for that, but I also just feel like audiences are a little more sophisticated than people give them credit. Or maybe I don't know. Am I the only one that feels that way? Or
no, I do think that like, was that a conversation? I think again, I think that was a conversation I had with the director who shall not be named when they were talking about adapting the Moon play. It was kind of like, you have to make, people aren't gonna get this. And it's like, well, if they don't get this, then it's not for them. Like, it's
yeah.
I don't want to have to dumb things down for that. And I do agree. I think audiences understand more than we give them credit for. I think, yeah.
I get it. It's a business at the end of the day, but also you'd be surprised as long as you have a through line and you're not being like, I don't know, super abstract with everything. Because I feel like sometimes some people can go really far with being abstract, where it's like,
Yeah, I think it's a fine line to walk between like giving the audience information they need to draw their own conclusions. Like you don't want to like, I don't think that like, shoving this is a political statement in front of people's faces is very effective. But I think making sure that like I do think that like throughout the process, as we're so in it, sometimes we forget that like what's in our heads doesn't always make it to the page. So sometimes like that's why you have like multiple readers and people who are like hey, I didn't understand this, and it's like, oh, that's because it's not stated like
Mhm.
making sure that the audience is getting what they need to make the conclusions, but also not drawing it straight for themselves. I just think of like, I like Marvel movies, but I do think sometimes they're a little too like, are you guys getting this about it? And it's like, yes, we get it. We
No,
get it.
you're right. They can be very on the nose. They're very formulaic, which I think the industry is waking up to it. I think, they're catching on to the fact that audiences are sophisticated, especially when you start to see the things that are seeing success. Like, for example, The Penguin. I don't know if you watch that.
I need to. It's been recommended to me by so many people, and it's
Maddie, it's gonna blow you away. I'm
yeah, I
telling
heard
you.
it's so good. I haven't had like time to like sit down and watch it. I've been watching Deadwood recently, which I'm years behind on, but I'm enjoying so much.
I'm gonna
And
catch
then
up on that. I've never watched that show.
it is so it's like, it's 2004 HBO, but the dialogue is
Oh, I
like,
heard.
I mean, just anyone who's seen it is gonna hear me talk about it and be like, "Girl, you are 20 years too late." But honestly, like it's Shakespearean, and it's lovely. And they say cocksucker every 5 seconds. It's beautiful.
I'm gonna watch it. I mean, I know it's also pretty short. It didn't really survive too long in the season count, but I know that they also dropped the movie, which is like the final episode of sorts.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch it. I heard good things. I mean, I love Timothy the Elephant and what's his name? Ian McShane. Is that his name?
Ian McShane is like watching
Yeah.
a really good taco. It's beautiful. Like,
Yeah, I heard he kills it as the villain. But jumping into acting, because I asked you a little bit earlier briefly, but like to just sort of segue back into that, like what got you into acting? What was the thing you read that was like, you know what, I want to go up there and say these words?
I think in the third grade, like my third grade teacher really loved Shakespeare, and like making, which is I'm really grateful for, is to like have at the age of 8 a teacher who's like, hey, here's this guy named Shakespeare, and like doing so in a way that is accessible to a bunch of 8-year-olds. So we did a very condensed children's. It really wasn't a children's version. Like the characters got drunk, but it's a condensed version of Twelfth Night. And I remember like I really wanted to be Viola. I actually went and read like the full version, and I remember falling in love with the scene she has with Duke Orsino. It's like my father had a daughter, loved a man, and if I were a woman, I would your lordship. The whole thing, where she's confessing that she loves the Duke, but couching it in the language of, oh, my sister loved a man once, my metaphorical sister, who is actually me. I remember reading that and just loving that language, and I remember my aunt was an actress. And so she had these like tapes of like British accents. So I listened to those and went in to audition with like this little 8-year-old shitty British accent. And I got the part.
Can you do the accent? Can I hear that? She's an actor, folks. Don't be offended if
My father had a daughter, loved a man, and if I were a woman, I would your lordship. What's her history? A blank, my lord. She never revealed her love, but like concealment, like a worm in a bud, fade on her damask cheek. She pined in thought, and with a green and yellow melancholy, she sat like patience on a monument, smiling at grief. Was this not love? We men may say more, swear more, and indeed our shows are more than will, for still we prove much in our vows, but little in our love. Shall I to this lady?
That right there. That's what I'm talking about.
I didn't get to say that because in the condensed version. Well, first, no, I didn't get to say that because they split the role in the third grade. So they split the role. So this other girl got the first half, and they split the role right after that scene. So she got the my father had a daughter, loved a man scene. And then I got the rest of the play, which included the sword fight and the reveal, but I was so mad. I was so upset at the age of 8 that I didn't get the my father had a daughter, loved a man scene, because it's the most beautiful scene in the play. And then after, Jesus Christ, this dog is snoring like a mother. And then after that, like for a bit, I was like, I really want to act. And because my aunt was an actor, she's like, okay, you need a resume and a headshot. And then I gave up because I didn't know what that was. So, and then I went to school, and then in high school I did well, in high school I did sports and
Hmm.
then I got injured. So then I did theater and then I was like, hey, I really like this. So then I went to college for it. And then, yeah.
Now you became a full-time actor who's like winning Emmys and like who's out there just like the
Who's
other
out
day.
here in New York competing against these fucking NYU kids who have been going to Ripley Grouse since they were 17. And I'm like, what
That
the shit?
doesn't mean that they're good though. You have a different level of experience, and I would
I don't know.
say,
These NYU kids are built different. I don't know what to say.
I mean, I'm also just like low key jaded because I wanted to go to Tisch when I was younger, but then I was like, do I need to be a director in Tisch? Does that really help me? And
Oh,
I
for
don't
real?
know.
I got into NYU and my mom wouldn't let me go.
It's
I
it's
had so many fights with my parents about wanting to go to AMDA or ADA or either one of those. I would have been happy with audition. I just wanted to audition for either one of those and they wouldn't let me. It was a big fight, but
And now you showed up in town. You're like a accomplished playwright because people have seen your play at least in two separate states. Um, and who knows? I feel like the Moon Play still has like again, it's either a movie if it has legs. It has legs.
I've been trying to think of ways like I kind of want to stage it again here. I don't know. I don't have an in yet. I haven't figured out how to.
What about the She NYC?
I don't know if I can submit it again, first of all, because they have the so it's licensed through She NYC. So technically, if anyone wanted to produce it, they could. If you want to produce the Moon Play, go to shenyc.org. It is available though for licensing. So it's technically if anyone did want to produce it, they would be able to. I wouldn't be able to submit it for the festival again because it's already been produced under the festival. So
Got you. Well, check it out, guys. That play is awesome. Is it also like could you read it on the site or how does that work? Like, do you inquire about it?
I think you have to request information and you might get like a sample or something. I'm not actually sure. I know it's not on the site,
Okay.
but if anyone wants to take a look at it, just let me know.
It's worth it. It's worth it, guys. My last question is what would you say to somebody now who's starting out, who's just jumping into this industry? I mean, obviously everybody's quest is a little different, and I understand that the process is different, but just based on everything you know now, things you've accomplished so far, what advice would you give to somebody who was like, hey, Maddie, I want to be a writer. I want to be an actor.
Good fucking luck. No. I don't know. I really think. And again, I think this is just more speaking to my insecurity about the fucking NYU kids. I think training and study is really helpful. Like I'm taking a scene study class right now. I don't know if I'm any good at it, but like I think, eventually it'll help like boost confidence. I think being able to approach your work with a sense of authority and know what you're talking about really helps. And I'm not saying like spend thousands of dollars on a course. I wish I had the ability to do that, honestly, but just read as much as you can. Read plays, read scripts, fucking study. Like it's not, yeah. Like, I mean, I do have an appreciation for people who just like dive into the work, but I think it's really important to have the basis and understanding of what also came before you.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Fucking study, y'all.
Also, if you're gonna be an actor, learn your fucking lines.
Uh-oh. That sounds like a lesson.
One of the things that I think turned me off from LA is once I went to a shoot and this girl, lovely girl, beautiful girl, she was like, I really don't really need to know my lines as long as I get the general gist. And I was like, but you have a word that you need to say, otherwise my line doesn't make sense and you're never fucking saying it. So like, if you want to be an actor, just it's step one, learn your lines.
So in your experience, would you say there has been a lot of that improv mentality? Or was that like the main one that turned you off and then it was like, it stuck with you? Or would you say it's consistent? Like everybody you've at least out of basically one set out of like 3 had somebody who wants to improv. It's just like, you know what? I'm going to just go this direction.
I have nothing against improv, but I think that like, I think improv is a skill too, which I greatly appreciate. And I don't think I'm anywhere near skilled enough to improv, which is also why I stick to the script. But like, you just need a basis. And my understanding in that situation was this person has no basis,
Mhm.
which is, yeah. Um, and so that kind of left everyone around her to kind of flounder. Sorry, I did not mean to rant about LA actors.
No, no, no,
No,
no. You
I
were
know,
basically
I know
just
so many LA actors who are committed to their craft and like do the work and all that. So that's not like a knock on like LA,
no. It's
but
okay. It's an experience. You had a very real
it's an
experience.
experience, and I think that like I think that the, holding two truth two truths in both hands and one, I think that there is something very um I don't know how to say this without sounding like a dick, like a pretentious dick. But like I think there's something really admirable about like in film and theater, the do-it-yourself nature where it can be just like, you know, write what you want and get it produced. I
Mm.
think there also needs to be like a basic level of knowledge and safety and respect for others involved in that too. There's been a couple times where I've entered situations where it's like, oh, cool, you have some really ambitious ideas, but you don't know how to enact them in a way that keeps people safe. And that like it's so cool that you have these ambitious things and ideas, but the lack of training and knowledge means that the people around you are not safe. Because it is a very vulnerable. In this case, it was a nude shoot. I had a nudity writer, and it wasn't handled very well. And I had to advocate for myself because I had a, But I was all like, if you're going to be doing this, if you're going to, be having quote unquote, if you're going to write a rape scene into your script, you have to understand how that's going to affect your actors, how to do that safely.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not prepared to learn that, then don't do it. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that. And that is also what partially turned me off from LA is the amount of times I would go into an audition like, oh, there's a rape scene. Cool. Is there an intimacy coordinator? Well, no, but one of the makeup artists is going to be a woman. So it's like, you're not prepared to do this. And I got really tired of that.
Yeah, and it's actually way more common than I realized because I have, I'm very particular about like why I would write a sex scene. And you're right. Some people don't really understand why they're doing it. Like, I think some people do it for the shock value, or they're like, maybe they think they're being mature and they're writing, especially me working at a college. I've seen a lot of like student films that want to like push the boundaries with nudity just because it's like something to
And
do.
I mean, that's understandable, but if you don't have like the basic understanding of like why you would put that in and how to do that safely, you shouldn't be doing it. Like, I mean,
Right.
that sounds harsh, but
No, it's true because it's like, you're right that there is a whole psychological element to it, and there is there's another thing that I think you're correct. A lot of directors don't really think about, and I can't speak for the ones that are successful now because obviously they have the budget for such things. But for the up and coming ones, yeah, I've seen a lot of like just I want to do this for shock value.
I don't know. When I look at like nudity in film, like the one shoot that I did where I had a nudity writer and like I had a discussion with the director beforehand and I understood like why the nudity was in there.
Mm-hmm.
The way it was implemented maybe wasn't entirely well thought out. Like during the actual like process of shooting, like I think there wasn't a lot of thought put into like the technical aspects of how we were going to handle it. But I understood the purpose within the script. If I didn't understand the purpose, I probably would not have done it. I wouldn't like put a blanket statement out and go like, oh, men are probably, more okay with nudity than women. I mean, I can't, nobody can say that for sure. I think historically women have been subjected to it more. I think if you were to go and count like all the amount of time, female nudity versus male nudity in, movies and film and I mean, theater might be different. I mean, Equus exists, but, just look at HBO. I think male nudity has only been a thing recently. Yeah. So I think the historical context of it is different for women. But on like a case by case basis, I mean, I do think though, like, I think it does read very much when you're watching something and it's like, oh, they just really wanted them to be naked on screen. Like, I think if it's without a purpose, I think it reads, and that's when I'm like, okay, really?
Can I ask, how do you feel about the final product of that film, the one that you acted in, the one that you had to do the nudity? Did they execute? Did it like come out the way it was supposed to in like your mind when you read it?
I yeah, I think it was fine. I think if the process had been a little safer, I think I would have been less concerned with trying to protect myself and more focused on what can I do with this character. Um, but like, it was one of those things where like the nudity writer stated it was a 2-day shoot, and the nudity writer said the nudity will take place on this day, one day of the 2-day shoot. And then on the second day, the DP, he was now pretty popular on TikTok actually. But the DP was like, "Can we get more shot? Can you go in?" And I said, "No, my nudity writer said one day." And she's like, "Well, it's not that big deal. It's just topless." And I was like, "No, my nudity writer said one day." So so they figured out a camera angle so I wouldn't have to undress on the second day. But it's like,
That's wild that they tried to push it too. That's a
yeah, not it was just like, I understand that everyone has a job to do on sets like that, but having to protect myself like that meant that I couldn't focus as much on my job. It was also like, a photo was taken of me topless, and that was part of the script, and I asked, okay, where does this photo go when we're not in production? Like, at the end of the day, when we're not filming, where does this go? And they were like, and I was like, okay, cool. So it's mine. I'm taking it home. So it's just the knowledge that these things weren't thought of.
Yeah.
Read to me as they're not prepared to do this, and therefore I have to take extra precautions, which means that I can't be as free with this character as I would like to, because
Yeah. Would you say that?
I mean, not to shit on this. It was an indie film. It was a student film. The filmmakers were all young. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, you need the basic knowledge, you need the training. If you don't have that, you're not prepared to do this.
Right. And having experienced that, like, would you say you'd approach it differently this time?
I think I would ask more questions going into it. I wouldn't say that I mean, I knew going into it they didn't have the budget for an intimacy coordinator. And I think, yeah, I think I advocated for myself as much as I could, and also the makeup artist on that shoot was lovely. She was incredible in terms of like also advocating for other women on a set like that. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it again. I think I would ask more questions up front.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't say I'm entirely happy with that performance. Like, I mean, like, again, that's the whole point of having a writer, is so you can point to it and say, like, no, like, I would not do that without a writer. Again, I think I advocated for myself as best as I can. I think, asking questions, I guess it's not fair of me to say like, oh, they didn't think about the photograph when I didn't think about the photograph until I was there, and it was like, oh. But also,
yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like, there's some part of this, and that's the takeaway for everybody listening. That there's some part of this. Like, if you're running a production, you have to have all the answers. That's just what it is.
I think also just like because again, like film and screen work was something I fell into out of necessity because of COVID. Like, I grew up in theater. That's where I feel most comfortable with, which is why moving to New York has been so hard and been like, oh, I miss this, but also I feel so like underdeveloped in it now because I've been away for so long. I feel like the power dynamic is also very different when it comes to screen versus stage, if that makes any sense.
No, it does, but elaborate on that. Like, what do you like? What is the power dynamic? What's the difference in that?
Like, I mean, and I don't mean to like speak broadly or like, so I'm sure there are I've been in some productions where it's like the power dynamic is very unbalanced, but for me, theater has always felt more collaborative. It's easier to advocate for yourself as an actor because you don't have to worry about things like camera angles and lighting. I mean, you do have to worry about lighting, but all that all the technical aspects come after. That's why you have a tech week that comes near the end of rehearsals, because all the tech stuff comes last. Versus on screen, it's all the tech stuff comes first. And then I've noticed there are a lot of directors who were the acting in that. For some directors, where the actors are just like an afterthought or another prop, or like, the little dolls you move around to, like, I did see a Facebook post where someone referred to actors as meat puppets, and they got rightfully roasted for that.
Did this guy say that? Did this guy? This is Hitchcock.
Did he?
Didn't he say that? He said actors were cattle.
Here's this rando on Facebook, and he got rightfully roasted for it. But like, and so and like, I get it. Like, sets are fucking stressful.
Yeah.
But it's when you're a director and you have to be thinking about all these different things, I can understand why, an actor being like, well, I don't really get it. Like, I can understand why that's not at the forefront of your mind. But when that is my job as an actor to be like, well, what about that? And so some of the best experiences I've had are where the directors are more actor oriented than where the directors are more actor oriented and the DPs are more the ones who are like, oh, well, what about, the technical aspects kind of it, which I know is generalizing it again, and I could be talking out of my ass. But
no, you're not. It's a preference, really. I mean, and, it's definitely something, it's a good observation, because I feel like every set, they just have their own process of doing things. And I mean, ultimately, I can't say one or the other doesn't work, because obviously when you're on screen, you're telling a different language, and the camera angles are equally as important as the performance, because they have to, they complement each other. And, speaking from my experience, because I feel like sometimes I could be more actor-centered. You're like, you saying that is honestly like me shedding a light on myself. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I'm a little more technical in the sense that, and maybe this is too much to presume, but I trust my actors, like, for the most part, if you have the part, if like we sat down prior to getting on that set, I trust that you understand something about this character that I don't. And I mean, obviously, the rehearsal part is definitely a crucial element to it all. But for the most part, if you have the role, unless there's something you feel you need to actively ask for, I kind of will let you do your thing, unless it's really off key with like how I see it. Because also that's the thing. I edit, so not many directors edit. I'm not saying that there aren't hybrids out there. I mean, I feel like nowadays that's kind of what it is. Like, if you're a director, you kind of have to do it all. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's a case-by-case situation. I never felt like I had to really go that route. Like, for example, when you and I shot Like This, you wrote it. So I was like, oh, Maddie knows this in a way that I don't. There's a part of her who just understands this in such a different way. So the person I really had to talk to the most was Farah, just to make sure that she was on the same page with certain things. But I hear you. Like, I think there's that thing where you have to find that happy balance. I just don't know if I've necessarily had to go that route yet. But I mean, also, you also strike me as a very low maintenance kind of actor. Like,
yeah, no, I don't mean it in terms of like, well, I think my character would do this, but it's more of, yeah, I'm trying to think of like.
Well, some people need it. Like, some actors, they need a different push to get that performance out. So I agree. There's something that you have to be a little more mindful of when you're running a production.
I think I just got so sick of okay, can you do that, but with your head tilted this way, 3 degrees to the left? And it's like, just let me, like, I understand you're trying to get the best shot possible, but this is not, I would not, no one would deliver, like, I understand that's also part of the actor's job, is to marry the technical aspects with, like, the character motivations.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was some other shoot where I had like 3 different people telling me to do 3 separate things at the same time, and eventually I was like, can I get what? Can I get like what? I can't. I literally can't. So it's like,
I think that was me. I'm sorry.
It was just like, and in stage you don't have to. I mean, you do have to deal with like hitting your marks and making sure that like, you can be heard, but you don't have to deal with like all the bullshit of turn your head 3 degrees to the left and don't look into the camera, look over there, make sure that you don't have to worry about that in theater.
When you start directing films, how would you direct them differently? would you apply all of the things that all the pet peeves that you find on the on the sets that you dislike the most, and would you like take those with you and like amplify your skill set as a director? Like, would you, like the don'ts of directing?
I'm trying to think. Like I've directed two things, and so the pirate play for my friend Riley, it was more staged. So like I mean like it was a film stage production, but we had to come up with like a shot list and everything. And so I'd like to think that like hopefully I gave my actors the freedom to just kind of do what they want as long as we were wide enough to capture it. Because the idea was to give you like the idea of a stage on film. I mean, there were a couple like specific shots that I wanted so that we could get like the, close-ups of certain characters, especially on two-handers, which I felt like the two-handed scenes were easy enough to like just go back and forth on. But like especially for like big group shots, because also it was just me being lazy. I was like it was like a week of just me going, why did she write a play with so many fucking people in it? And then,
that was intense. That was a daunting task. So,
but also because I was really lucky to have such really talented actors, a lot of them with backgrounds in improv and making, but we basically told them just make big, bold fucking choices. And with that in mind, we just kind of let them do what they wanted. And the result was really fun. So I'm hoping that I wasn't too very much like, dude, I mean, the fight scenes had to be choreographed in a certain way to be filmable. But again, we tried to marry like, the technicalities of stage with the requirements of film. So, I wasn't all that specific with make sure you're looking over there, the eye line is there and because again, we weren't trying to, I think that also comes from, film in theater, the suspension of disbelief is greater versus I think that, not everyone favors, but I think that like, I've been told over and over again that, people kind of expect a little more realism in film. Like they're not expecting the set to be mimed. They're not, they want, the suspension of there's less of a suspension of disbelief. Like people are expecting it to be almost as realistic as you can get.
Yeah.
And I wasn't all concerned with that when I did the pirate play. I was like, this is obviously a bunch of people in a coffee shop. We're not pretend. This isn't Pirates of the Caribbean. We're not CGIing Davy Jones's face all over the place. If anything, we're just gonna have someone go like this, and that was what was theatrical about it. So I wasn't all that concerned if, one shot has them looking over there and the other shot has them looking over there. If their eye lines don't match, I wasn't fucked about that because I was like, no, it's this is.
What's a different energy,
Yeah.
A very different energy.
Yeah, it felt a lot more like do it yourself kind of thing. With Bloom, that was another week shoot last minute. I probably tried to be a little more technical, but because also I was working with friends, and I think also like trusting the people you're working with. A lot of the times, like shoots is you see these people for a day and then you never see them again, and which is totally fine. Like that's the way it works.
This industry is very polyamorous.
Yeah, I think I work better with people I know and trust, though, which is, has its hazards too. But I work on Bloom. I worked with some of my best friends, and so we already had like a common language and style of communication. So, if I wanted to get really technical, which I still think I wasn't all that. Like, I mean, you saw it, you had to edit it. It could have been more technically like precise. But
what does that mean? Because like the thing is, you had a lot of cool shots that basically set up the world in the way you intended to set it up. Like I can't say there was
we weren't all that fucked about consistent lighting or we weren't continuity was kind of fucked all over the place because we were trying to get it done before I had to leave Portland. But yeah, I think but again, we're talking about like actor oriented because, there's that scene where Riley has her breakdown when she's at the plant.
I was watching that the other day and I was like, damn, that shit must have took a while to clean up. Because that was just, I was looking at I was like, that's a rug, right? That's a rug. That's not
I
even
think
that's
I
not
can't
even like a
remember
regular floor. That's
that.
like a whole ass rug. And I was like,
Um,
y'all are just too comfortable right now. I'm like, whoa.
well, I honestly can't remember, but I do remember because again, Riley is like my best friend in the world, and we're both actors. And I remember you would probably know this too because you had to figure out that I think you just cut out the sound from that, but it was me coaching her through that scene of her breakdown. Um, and I think that's also like, that's a very actor oriented style of directing. I think I've watched videos of like I think like Greta Gerwig directing like Saoirse
Mhm.
Ronan in like Lady Bird, and I think that's kind of like a style that like I really admired, where she's just breaking it down for her actors what she wants, but in a way that is collaborative and open to their you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so
All right.
like yeah, that was kind of what I was taking from there. I think it's this like clip of her directing Timmy and Saoirse Ronan on the set of Lady Bird, and they're like running up and down, and she's like just like okay now roll around and like just throwing ideas out at them for them to interpret, and she's guiding them, but she's not
She's not
forcing,
micromanaging.
not micromanaging them. She's she's throwing out ideas for them to play with, and it is like a collaborative way that is able to bring like what felt like genuine responses. And so that's kind of like maybe that's kind of what I was trying to emulate with Riley. I don't know if that's like what happened, but I do think it like I need to go back and watch it. Actually, it's been years,
I
but
think you guys
I
worked
think
well
that
off each other, actually, just
yeah,
having watched it.
we've known each other for like 8 years now. But I think that's like a style of directing that I really admire. That in that it is guiding but not micromanaging. It's collaborating with your actor but knowing what you want. I don't know. Again, this feels like just me complaining at her. But I remember another time I went in for an audition and I did something, and the director, who again was young and learning, came up to it said, "Okay, can you do that again, but make it more emotional?" And I was like,
What does that mean?
"What emotion do you want?"
What does that mean?
Like
These are good cautionary tales for people listening because, you might help someone not make those mistakes down the line when they're working with their actor. You would challenge people to actually think about the reasons why they stop a scene or why they're even doing the scene to begin with. So I appreciate that you're sharing these little horror tidbits because
And
they
I mean,
happen.
I don't mean to like complain the entire time. I've had some really lovely experiences with directors too that I've left being like, oh my God, I'm so grateful to have had the chance to tell this story. It's the,
You gotta let it out because those things are, listen, if you don't talk about it, somebody's gonna just keep doing it. And it's happening right now. Somebody somewhere is on a set saying, hey, I need more emotion. That's what's happening. And to be fair, I've been a victim of this. Well, not the victim, the culprit of it. Like, when I was talking to my editors at the time, before I was an editor, I would say things like more imagery.
more, you said more imagery, and they're like, how about this?
Yeah, that was literally what. Well, no, Tariq was one of my main editors back then. This is what I told him when we were editing the feature doc that I did. And he always shits on me for that. He's like, more imagery, Jose. I'm just like, damn, cut me some slack, But I hear you. It does happen, and it can be frustrating, especially when directions aren't clear. So be clear, guys. That's the point of this tale. Be clear, be intentional. Say no to drugs.
Don't, if you graduate high school at the age of 13, don't do robo fights.
Exactly.